this day, this Good morning. Thank you, Janine and Marcia. Y'all did a great job. Where did they go? There they are. Ah. Y'all did a great job with that. Thank you. I also want to thank Mark for coming from Danville. That's great of you. We haven't seen you in a long time. It's great to have you back. Too long. Today I want to talk about forgiveness, and I just want to break it out into two parts, two ways of doing forgiveness. So there's one way, you're going to be on this side. One way of doing forgiveness is to realize that there's really nothing to forgive. And then the other way is a way where you think there's something to forgive and you need to get to it. So I'm going to start there, because to get here often is precluded by the fact that we're too deep into this side and we can't seem to break out of it to get to a higher revelation that there's really nothing to forgive. And many of the metaphysics, for instance, like the Course in Miracles would say this, that there's really nothing to forgive. But many times we don't live in that world. We don't experience that. What we really experience is the fact that somebody done me wrong and I am mad about it. I'm angry. I'm going to hold a grudge. I feel bad. Or maybe I've done something wrong and I feel bad. Or maybe you'd like somebody to forgive you. I'm going to talk about you forgiving yourself and forgiving others mostly. That's what I'm going to do on this side. Let's talk about that process. So basically you see yourself as an individual. This is the trick, is that you see yourself as an individual and that someone can do something to you. So in that sense we're identified with the body and the mind, so we can feel insulted, and bruise the mind, or we can be physically hurt and we can bruise the body. And those are the two major ways that someone can hurt us, is that they can take away our sense of self or they can hurt us physically. And in so doing, we develop resentment. Now, I think as a species growing up on this planet, the animal species, this was okay for them. It kind of helped keep people from taking advantage of them. And it's really quite natural to have a sense, when you identify with this body-mind complex, that you would also carry with it a need to protect yourself, and in some ways a need to remember who's hurt you and to keep that front and center. I've often said that we're Teflon for good and we're Velcro for bad, right? That's what we remember, is what's bad. If you can imagine yourself as, let's say, a sheep, and you're grazing in a field of grass, you might not remember every blade of grass you ate, but you're definitely going to remember the time you saw the tiger, right? One matters a lot more than the other for physical survival. And so our body and our minds are conditioned to hold on to what is dangerous or difficult for us so that we can survive. But to move to a higher state of consciousness, we have to kind of transcend our bodies, and we'll get to that in a minute. But basically what we're working with here is this natural instinct to hold on to the negative. And forgiveness is a way of releasing that. If we don't forgive, we will carry the experience of the bad inside us. And it could be some decision we've made about ourselves that we are not excuse what we have done is unforgivable. Now, just parenthetically, forgiveness is not condoning. And it's a good distinction, because when I start talking about forgiveness and you're going, well, I don't want to forget, I don't want to forgive because I don't want to say it was okay. Well, this is the distinction between just your animal reaction and a higher level of understanding, which is forgiveness. So you may need to remember, and you may need to essentially pursue justice, or at least stop the behavior. So that's true. That's all very true. That may be what you need to do. But you can also add in there forgiveness. So there are many stories of people who have gone to visit someone who is killed a child, their child, and they visit them in prison, and they're not asking that they be taken out of prison. They just go there to let them know they are forgiven. So there is a distinction between the consequences of your actions and the forgiveness process. So let's come back to the forgiveness process. We forgive to feel better inside ourselves and to free ourselves. This is the first cause. It has a ripple effect on those to whom we forgive, but the first place it affects us is right here at home. We feel different. I tell this story on myself. I was in a 10-day meditation retreat. This 10-day meditation retreat, you meditated 10 to 12 hours a day, sitting cross-legged on the floor. After a while, the body just reacts to almost everything, and generally I would have pains in my back. But this moment, during this meditation, 1 hour, they were hour-long meditations, so one of the sits, I started to have the conversation in my mind with somebody I had worked with in the year before. And I was having an argument with her in my mind. And I promise you, it felt like someone was sticking a knife in me. Every time I continued on that, the knife went in deeper and twisted. But I was stubborn. And I persisted for no more than that hour, because the hour was all the meditation could be. I did that, and the pain stayed there the whole time. This is the subtle experience that most of us walk around not recognizing, because you haven't been sitting still for 50 hours that week. The pain is there from this unforgiveness. And it affects us. It affects us physically. It gives us aches and pains. It affects us perhaps in the form of disease. It certainly affects your mind. You're not as free, you're not as happy when you're carrying this. You may be free on the surface, but you're not far from having that experience, and it probably percolates through almost everything you're doing. So you're not free when you have unforgiveness. And so the Buddha would say this: if you're holding unforgiveness, you're holding hot coals in your hand so that you can throw them at somebody. Bad bargain. Right? It is so toxic to the body, to the mind, to hold unforgiveness, that the Buddha also said this. I think it was the Buddha, or maybe it was Joe. And he said, unforgiveness is like swallowing poison, hoping the other person will die. It's not smart. We need to release for our own health, for the health of our community, for the health of all your relationships. Can you think of one relationship that is improved by unforgiveness? Can you think of anyone who really profits from unforgiveness other than those that profit from misery? People who profit from selling arms, people who profit from fighting one another, but not the people who profit from doing good work. Only those who wish you ill, who do not need you to be happy, profit from your unforgiveness. But those who love you, those who would like to like you at least, all of the crowd that you hang around with, they all profit by you forgiving. It ripples out. It has an effect on the whole society. I was listening to the radio on the way in today. Syria. The conditions that are causing the war in Syria are quite complex. But it all boils down to, I don't like you. One group doesn't like the other. And they are ruining that country. Taking beautiful cities and making them into rubble. It's expensive for the world. It's expensive for us to not forgive. So the question now becomes how to forgive. Now I think in this side of forgiveness here, the side of forgiveness that says you did me wrong and I need to do something about it to release myself from it. One of the biggest obstacles from that is the emotion that comes with it. The emotion of anger or upset, feeling a victim or something. That emotion, when it's too high, it makes clearing your mind of your unforgiveness, it makes it much more difficult. So the thing that you need to do is pull the emotion down, have less emotion around that. Potentially that's important for you to get to a state of forgiveness. There's a way of doing that I think is really quite powerful, quite quick, and involves hurting no one or beating any pillows. It is this. Imagine that your emotions are a campfire. You have a campfire that is burning, and that is from the event that's happened, and you have the emotion that goes with it. And you're sitting beside the campfire around with all your peers, and you're there, and you start to tell the story about what happened. And you reach over and grab another log and throw it on the fire. And the fire gets hotter and bigger. And then you tell the story again, and you throw another log on the fire. And then while someone else is talking, you're rehearsing your story, and you throw another log on the fire. And pretty soon that fire cannot burn out because you keep adding logs to the fire. But if you do this, if you stop the story completely, don't tell the story out loud and don't tell it to yourself. Stop the story, but you sit there around the fire and you feel the heat. And this is important. You can't walk away. You can't just ignore it. You got to feel the experience. Because at some level it has happened and it's coming into your level of awareness and it is in your body now and you must feel the feelings. But when you feel the feelings, it burns up the feelings. There's only so much energy in that. And at some point, it will burn it up. It will take it away. You will be able to come back to the same situation and you will not feel the feelings. They will not arise if you will do the magic of stopping, telling the stories, and just feeling the feelings. Again, I was at a 30-day meditation retreat. I was talking to my counselor in that thing, and I said, I must have been 10 or 15 days into it, and I was telling her about some upset, and I think she told me that technique, and I said, oh, you mean so you stop the story and feel the feelings? And she looked at me like I was the dumbest person she had ever seen. She said, what do you think we've been saying? It was a Buddhist meditation retreat. What do you think we've been saying for the last... She stopped herself, and she forgave me. Please don't forget this. I don't know how many times I heard it before I heard it. I tell that story on myself, not just because it's ridiculous, but because if you don't take it in and use the practice, you'll lose it pretty quickly, and you won't remember it when you need it. So remember this. Stop the story. Feel the feelings. The worst experiences of your life will dissipate within a short period of time. I would say within a week, if you do this. They will go down from 100% down to 10% at least within the week. You may have a residual feeling every once in a while. The story might somehow get triggered and it comes up again, but if you stop the story and feel the feelings, it will go away. Promise. If it doesn't work, come complain. All right? All right, so now, you've broken the feeling stranglehold on you, and now you have the chance to use your mind clearly. And in that using your mind clearly, one of the best things you can do is go, oh my gosh, I share the intent or sometimes the desire, or I've even done the very thing I'm angry about. I too am like that. Jesus said, let he who has never sinned cast the first stone. Do you know that? Remember that story? Woman is brought to him by a crowd of angry men, and they say to Jesus, we're going to get you now. So what would you do with this woman? She's caught in adultery. Jesus gets down, draws his finger in the sand, and he goes, well, let the one of you who has committed no sin be the first one to cast a stone. And they went away, starting with the eldest. Wouldn't we, if we really thought about it, come to realize that our stance of superiority and our stance of perfection and we are in the right, our right to be the judge is probably predicated on the fact that we've forgotten or ignored our own failings and weaknesses, where we have hurt others and how we have ignored the good we could do. Is that not true? We're all in this together. Kind of comes with being a human being. We make mistakes. We hurt other people's feelings. We hurt them physically. We mess up something really big. We've done it. Sometimes we do it knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, but we've done it. So to be the judge is to deny our own culpability. So it's important for us to recognize that on an even deeper level, we share humanity with them, and they are us. That we're not only like them in our ability to make mistakes, but like them in their desire to be happy, like them in our willingness to try and improve ourselves, to take care of what we value, and sometimes that feels like it's at the expense of others. We are like them at depth. And also, we're like them in our failings, but we're also like them in their potential. We are more than that. I was fascinated to listen to a guy who had killed somebody and was now out of prison 20 years after being in prison and spending 7 years in solitary confinement. And he was talking about the need to forgive himself. So it goes both ways. If you can't forgive yourself, you're going to repeat it, essentially, if you keep it up. Because what you put your mind on repeatedly, you tend to come back to. You tend to do it again. Even if you have decided you must remember it so you'll never do it again, you almost are setting yourself up to do it again. Because you have decided to pay attention to this, and not about to what you could be, but what you were. And then as you keep coming back to who you were rather than who you could be. It is important to recognize how much pain and suffering we have caused another and to make corrections for this, absolutely. But you do that in a briefer way than unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is a stuckness to it. You stick to it, you keep it with you, you drag it with you wherever you go. You move from Philadelphia to San Francisco and you bring your guilt along with you. That is not really California freedom. That's just one more Philadelphia. Right? You got to leave that baggage back there. You made the mistake. Big deal. You did. Feel what it's cost you and other people so that it will imprint upon you like your mammalian mind knows how to take what's bad. It knows how to remember that, but you do not want to drag it with you. Just know, learn, and move on. You're designed to be free, not to be a slave to your past. So release it. Forgive yourself. You have never done anything that no one else has ever done. You have never done anything that God could care less about, I think. Quite frankly, I think how big God is. I love this. It liberates me enormously because I think if God is out there making universes, probably not too worried about what I said to my mother. Just, get over it. You did it. You did it out of self-protection. You did it out of foolishness. You did it out of whatever it is. You are not supposed to be perfect. Perfect would not allow for transformation. Perfect comes from imperfect. Transformation, comes from imperfect. It does not come from perfect. Perfect doesn't go anywhere. Perfect means complete. Complete is not who you want to be. So I guess you want to be imperfect. Really, if you think about it, you need these events. So they have happened. Now forgive it. All right, so don't focus on it because it'll bring you back to doing the same thing. So you drop the emotion, you take the lesson, you release it. The release. How do you release? Intend to. Connie Domino's in the house. Connie Domino wrote a book on forgiveness. You might want to read that. Is it called Forgiveness? The Law of Forgiveness. Connie has many stories in there of people who've had great success after letting go of their unforgiveness, because it has freed the energy to blow into their lives a new wind and let them have success in whatever they were wanting. We have to uncork the potential within us by forgiveness. So you intend to do it. Connie has a bunch of affirmations in there. An affirmation is a form of prayer. Another form of prayer is, God, please help me forgive. Pretty straightforward. You could probably remember that one. God, please help me forgive, because often we don't even want to. So sometimes we have to say, God, help me want to forgive, because I don't want to forgive. I want to sit there in meditation and feel that knife in my chest. I just want that, right? But we have to be willing. All you have to be willing is to be willing. Willing to be willing will be enough. And then I promise you, the divine wants to help you with this. And as soon as you say help, help comes. You know, it was, and I just make a distinction about this. Sometimes I've asked for help in creating a new outer circumstance. It may be coming, it may take a while, it's whatever, you know, it might take a while to unfold. But the moment I say, help me change, it's like, we got you. We are not letting you out of that chair until something's different, and it's happening now. So sit tight, buddy. It's going to happen if you ask for help, and you will begin to feel this transformation. Promise. It happens. So, release the energy. Be clear that you can learn the lesson and be done with it, then ask to get it over with. That sets us up to be free of unforgiveness at the human level. Now let's turn to the sacred level. At the level of the sacred, our hope is that we will recognize that we are part of the divine, and that all of this is a play of God. And as a play of God, it hurts no one, it damages no one, it is just an unfolding. That we are actually not our bodies, not our minds, and so we're unbruisable in the first place. You can't hurt what you're not, right? It is not you. They can take your body, they can take your mind, but they cannot take you. This is absolute freedom and often hard to get to. But this is the goal of spirituality, is to wake up to your real nature, which is that the real nature of you isn't even visible at this moment. It's deeper, or it's transcendent, or it's in another phase, but you are only like the tip of the iceberg, this thing. The rest of you is not seen. Now, I'd like to compare that to what Lynn McTaggart wrote in her book, The Field, when talking about physics. Like I know physics, but I'm just going to kind of quote her. But basically it says this, that underlying all that we can see here on the tangible universe is a power source, a form of energy which to the physicists is even remarkable to them in its size and its power. And that it is the same source that is causing the particles, the subatomic particles that build up the atoms, that build up the molecules, that build up the cells, that build up you and all you see. That subatomic particles are bleeping in and out of existence very quickly. And it's the thing that keeps that running. And it is so much energy in every bit of space, whether it's a vacuum or it's occupied by a rock. There's so much energy that is holding this or making this going on, that a cubic centimeter worth of space full of energy would be enough to boil the ocean. Now think of that. Duke Energy would be out of business. I mean, if we could tap into it, right? That's a lot of energy. This much could boil the oceans. The amount of energy that's in the vacuum of a light bulb is enough to boil the oceans. It is not really, It's incomprehensible. Probably in this room between all of us, the space that we're occupying, we could start a star or a solar system. It's enough. It's a huge amount. And if it's a huge amount, how is it that it's coming into small particulars that we are each, and that the trees and the rocks and all that are? How can it do that? It must be qualified. It must be qualified by something. What brings it into shape? This unbelievable amount of energy. What brings it into shape? Now in unity, we say it is consciousness that forms it. It is consciousness that gives it shape and form. So all along we've been saying, you have the power to create your world, etc., etc. Well, now that I'm reading about these physicists, I go, no, they weren't really kidding. It wasn't like, well, maybe you have the power. It's like the power is so overwhelmingly there. All it needs to be is shaped. And the only thing I can think of that can shape it, since it's so much more than matter, is not matter. It'd have to be consciousness. And what is consciousness? It is what you think and feel. That's how you know what your consciousness is about. And to change your consciousness is to then change how this enormous energy field is qualified. What will it become? It will become what you qualify it to be. If there's enough energy in here to boil a million oceans, I think it's enough for you to create your little world, right? From here to home, from home to work. Is that not true? Can you not see that as you travel from here to home, you could change your whole world if you could change your consciousness? If you could just change that which forms into the shape, the particulars of how this manifests. If you could change that, you could change things between here and the door. But more importantly, you could also realize that everybody else has that same capacity, and that actually we're all just playing God right now. We don't know it. We act in amnesia to this thing. We act like, oh my God, I'm this separate little body. You hurt my feelings. What a tiny way of seeing yourself. You are big because you sit on an ocean of energy that is qualified by your consciousness. And so does everybody else. And if you will come to the place where you recognize, oh my God, I am doing this, then how are you going to say they did it to me? They can't have done it to you because you're so powerful, no one could do anything to you that you in some way did not agree with. It just couldn't happen. The force is with you. I love this way of moving your hand like Obi-Wan Kenobi. These are not the droids you're looking for. These are not the droids we're looking for. Right? Remember that? This is how you shape your world. Change your consciousness. Project your image. Feel at a higher level. Move your vibration up. Forgive. Awaken to your true nature. Become the person you have chosen to be by focusing on who you choose to be rather than who you were. This is how you change your world. By changing your consciousness.
Yes!
See, I made him do that. This is what we're after. And we have to get through enough of this that we recognize, hey, I got some mental freedom here. I'm going to blow the doors off. I'm not going to be who I was before. I'm not going to be constrained by my current situation. The circumstances of my life are not the barriers to my future. They are just the past. And what will I do with it? But if you're carrying unforgiveness on a normal, mortal level, there's a really good chance you won't get to that awareness. So we do our little heavy lifting as this small, independent, separate self. We do that, yes. And how do we do it? We release the energy of it. We get rid of the emotion by experiencing the emotion. We decide, we ask, we pray. and we let go. And then we have made our minds more fertile for the realization that we are not the body and the mind, but we are really the divine playing as itself. We're a piece of it. Don't get too big. Don't go crazy. You are it, though. You take a cup of salt water out of the ocean, is it not still salty? So are you. The cup of God. If the salt of the earth has lost its salt, what use is it? Don't lose your salt. You are the divine. So here we are. Free to forgive through effort and prayer. And free to recognize there was nothing ever to forgive in the first place. Do what you can when you can. Let us pray. Start with the heart. The mind also gets so busy and thinks so much, it's hard to really get a deep realization if the mind is all that you're working with. It can help. It can be a beginning. But we want to go deeper. So bring some of the energy that's in your mind into your heart, please. Let us again contemplate that God is everywhere. The omnipotence, the all-powerful, is everywhere. In essence, the all-powerful is right here. And if it's right here, it might also be right where you are. Filling that space that is inside your skin. That might be the all-powerful's home as well as anywhere else. You are that cup in the ocean. Let that sink in. And if there's anything that's blocking you from that, let us forgive it. Any pain that blocks you from that experience, release it. A pain of judgment about yourself or a judgment of another, let it be released. Now come again to the question, to the contemplation of God being everywhere. Find the meaning in that for you. And choose to qualify your consciousness as you see fit. Freedom. By being who you really are. And so it is. So it really is. We're going to take up an offering. And interestingly enough, the affirmation we're going to say at the taking up of this offering is really an affirmation of the highest reality we can imagine, which makes giving and receiving quite easy. So let's say it together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. So it is. Thanks, Mark.
When there's nothing to hold on to but a dream made long ago, and you're fighting for a future no child